Okay. My name is Ray Lees. I'm the Planning Program Manager for the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission in Peoria. And we're responsible for the three counties of Peoria, Tazewell, and Woodford County. And we have, Tri-County has really three legs to its mission stool, if you will. The primary one is transportation and addressing infrastructure needs throughout those three counties. Secondary is the environmental and the environmental protection, and in the case we'll be talking about today, the leveraging of those assets in the area to our mutual benefit. And then the other is a more general community development role. Wherein a lot of these elements kind of come together, and we do interface and facilitation of activities with the various communities in the region. Looking at and my role is one of overseeing all of those areas. But one of the focuses that I've had in the last couple of years has really been looking at the environmental issues as they and community development to some extent. And then I do oversee and work with the folks in the transportation area, because transportation is an issue that's kind of ubiquitous throughout the region and can have a major impact on our success. Even in some of these other areas of the environment and community development, certainly. And so I'll start with just kind of giving an overview of the beneficial use of dredge material issue. And every kind of issue really has a genesis somewhere usually in a study. And that's the case with both beneficial use of dredge material and the Asian Carp harvesting issue. And the genesis for us with the Tri-County was a Peoria Lakes Comprehensive Conservation Plan that we completed a couple of years ago in collaboration with the Rock Island District of the Corps of Engineers. And they have both an economic and an environmental interest in the river as a navigable waterway, but also there are some interests that they have environmentally as well. And so out of that plan, and it basically focused on the upper and lower Peoria lakes, and obviously the only river that runs through it. And through those two bodies of water, which are actually expanded areas of the river that they call lakes, but essentially the river. And two of the issues that came out of that conservation plan were invasive species, which was a detriment to the environment, which was the Asian carp. And then another one was the increased amount of sedimentation that is impacting the Peoria lakes. And both of those are relatively complex issues just because of everything that influences why those are issues for us. And looking at the beneficial use of dredge material, we have seen over the last several decades, and again, this has economic implications as well as environmental implications, the sedimentation of the Peoria lakes. And the surface area of the two lakes is about 14,000 acres. And so from the surface, they look like huge bodies of water and really have a great aesthetic appeal to the people living in the region. However, most of the 14,000 acres, actually, that water is only anywhere from 18 to 24 inches deep. So it has huge implications as far as the impact on wildlife and habitat, as well as some activities that we have enjoyed several decades ago, and that is recreation. And so, and interestingly enough, the sedimentation impacts recreation, but the Asian carp also impact recreation for some reasons I'll get into in that discussion. But when we look at the sedimentation issue, you have to kind of you have to look at a number of different areas that are sources of the sedimentation and causes of it. And the region that we're in and the watershed for the Peoria Lakes in this area of the Illinois River is the watershed coming off of primarily farmland on either side of the Illinois River. And so that is a source of sediment, of basically prime topsoil, the rich black topsoil that we see, and what the farmers are doing to either stop it or mitigate it in some way that could reduce the amount of sediment that's flowing into the waterway. And then the other is the bluffs that we have on either side of the Illinois River and the Illinois Valley, and the erosion of the bluffs is also another source of sedimentation. So until we can correct, you've got the kind of the analysis of the river to the water's edge, and then from the water's edge out, you look at these other sources that are bringing the sedimentation into the waterway. And so there's discussions and arguments about where do you start with that, and the question is you kind of have to start everywhere, and there are certainly programs at the state and federal level and the U.S. Department of Agriculture and others that have programs that are incentivizing farmers to implement soil conservation measures, and it's in their best interest as well to keep the soil on the land. So there's all kinds of programs that they are following and becoming more educated about that are available these days, and many of them are implementing those, but they've not been adopted, kind of across the spectrum of agriculture in the watershed to really impact it in a great way right now at this point. And so obviously over the last 30 or 40 years, it is becoming with the increased yields and the increased interest in getting more economic benefit out of the soybeans and the corn and other products. It has become a concern to the farmers, but it's still not a primary economic driver for them, and so that's an issue. And then the other issue becomes the ownership of the land between the farm to the bluff, and then into the floodway. So every piece of land between the farm to the water's edge is the ownership of that property becomes an issue, because you've got to deal with each owner of those properties and show them the economic benefits of taking these conservation measures. So that is one part, and that even though we don't control that, we've engaged as far as this one particular issue from the beginning. I've pulled together some stakeholders that have an interest in all of these areas, be they the Farm Bureau and individual farmers or other property owners, and got them engaged in the conversation. But the thing that we can really, we can't really control it all that much, but we have a little bit more focus of the actual waterway and what is going on within the water, the waterway. And what we can understand is to the impact of sedimentation, and from an environmental standpoint, the sedimentation that is in the Peoria Lakes has detrimental impact from the standpoint of establishment of vegetation on the lake bed, which affects the wildlife and the habitat for wildlife in the lakes. But it also affects, as we mentioned, the recreation, because you can only have, with only 18 inches of water to navigate in. Obviously, you can't navigate the whole river and the Peoria Lakes in boats other than maybe John boats or pontoon boats. Well, yes and no. And I guess the other thing I should mention is, as far as sources, is that there are I can't remember the exact tonnage, but there are millions of tons of sediment that are flowing in from the watershed, but there's also millions of tons of sediment that's flowing from upriver. So I just want to be clear on that, is that the practice of the same issues that we're dealing with here in the Peoria area watershed, the same conditions exist upriver, and they're contributing to the sediment flowing into into our river in our area. And but as far as the beneficial use, so we looked at what some of the issues were as far as the removal, and thinking that because of the ongoing amount of topsoil and sand and other things that are sediment that's coming into the river, we speculated that heck, if that's coming into the river, that we ought to be able to dredge it and find some value for it. So part of the stakeholder group that we brought together a couple of years ago now included people kind of across the spectrum again. And one of the roles I think that is important for Tri-County to play is one of bringing people together that would otherwise not be talking to one another, and being kind of a convener of stakeholders that have a shared interest in a particular issue. And that was the case with the beneficial use of dredge materials. So in addition to, and those that had an interest in the river and the health of the river. And so bringing in thinking about this beneficial use, the presumption is that if this is topsoil, that it all ought to be very good and very usable. But the fact of the matter is that with so many sources sediment sources coming into the river, the sediment is not all the same. So it's not all topsoil. A lot of it is. Some of it is sand. Some of it is clay. So so it's a real mix. And then the hydrology of the river is such that the bottom of the river is not all farmland, black topsoil. So one of the issues that we have been challenged with here, and it has not happened yet, is to do a bathymetric survey of the bottom of the river in Peoria Lakes to determine what is on the bottom and how deep it is, what's the quantity. Because technically, it is the Corps of Engineers and other folks who have been involved in looking at this issue over the years have indicated that the sedimentation is such that we could be literally dredging 24/7, 365, and never get to the bottom of the original river. And because of the resupply, if you will, from the watershed and upriver, so it becomes a question of understand, like any business, of understanding where your resources are and then determining the value of that. Now, I can tell you, so there's all of these challenges that are floating out there that I've been trying to kind of keep a handle on, and people that are associated with those. but also to leverage the assets that we have in this area. And one of those that I tapped on, and Chuck Thiling, research psychologist, has been working with us on this subject, actually made the call. And after I suggested that we get them engaged, is the Ag Lab, the USDA lab here in Peoria, which is the largest one in the United States. And so we talked to some of their soil scientists, and they were more than happy. They rarely get asked to work on something in their own backyard, and so they were very gracious in opening up their labs and the research greenhouses and things like that, and actually helping us determine the value of the and determining the productivity, if you will, of this sediment. So that has been going on, as well as actual retrieval of sediment from the river, and the most active measures in that area have been associated with a couple of the stakeholders that were brought to the meetings and introduced and talking about some of the things that they're doing. And those two entities are the ADM Artco fleeting operation that have barge fleeting management operations up and down the Illinois River, and they happen to have a dry dock in East Peoria, or Creve Coeur actually, and they because of the sedimentation, they have to dredge their dry dock in some of their facilities all the time. And so that was a source of dredge material, and that was one where the Chuck Burlingame with ADM Artco said, "Hey, we've got some dredge material, can you use it?" And they said, "Well, how much do you have?" And I got a call from Chuck and said, "Well, we've got this. We got to dredge the dry dock. How much material do you have?" And he said, "Well, anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 tons." And so I said, "Well, that's great," and then went about contacting one of our other stakeholders, which we presume could use this, but again, he had to kind of test it from a business standpoint, and that was Paul Rosenbaum, owner of Better Earth Compost. So just in the past several months, actually, they have come together in a business collaboration where ADM Artco has a problem and they need a solution, and Paul Rosenbaum has a need, and so he can solve their problem. So they ended up trucking this 7,000. I think it's more than that now, because once they determined that they could dredge and transport that dredge material to Paul Rosenbaum's operation out by the airport, then that was an economic incentive to them, because they wouldn't have to put it on their barges and take it to the containment site south in Liverpool. And this is the first thing that they have to do with this dredge material, as I referenced earlier, was that they have to test it. They have to see whether it's clean and it doesn't have any contaminants. And this dredge material in the ADM Artco dry dock was clean, and so he was able to use all of it. Now, when Paul is in a position where he can use the material, and basically what he does with it is he mixes that basically topsoil dredge material with some sand, which is more dredge material that he takes from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers containment site down by Kingston Mills. So he takes that sand and that topsoil, mixes it with his compost into an engineered topsoil, if you will, and so by working with those ingredients and to different percentages, he can determine what the percolation rate is and kind of what the nutrient value is and all that. So there's the economic benefits. So he mixes that together and then sells it in bulk to another business, which then packages it and sells it to the big box stores. So that's the first example of kind of a true economic stream of taking an environmental issue, a detrimental environmental issue, and connecting it with the private sector to make a beneficial use. So that's been a great kind of process for us. Now, having said that, the ADM is basically, because it's a kind of a waste material and a nuisance material, they're basically giving this sediment to Paul. So Paul's not paying for it; he's taking it, but he's not paying for it. So the whole premise of saying, well, this should be good enough that we can bag it and sell it, is still something that we have to work on. But nobody said this was going to be easy. But I think the proof of concept has been. And that, again, when you have a product or a fish, and same thing with dredge material, actually, that has a public persona, and one of the things and I touched on it in the earlier conversation about this being an issue that impacted recreation, and that is the fact that the silver carp jump out of the water when you going through the water at a certain RPM as a defense mechanism to get out of the way of predators. But the outcome of that is the fact that you can't have any skiing, you can't have any necessarily boating per se, because these fish jump out several feet out of the water and can actually, depending on how big they are, they can actually hurt people if they're going fast enough. And I've personally been slimed several times sitting in the prow of the boat. And so it's but again, and because of that kind of strange behavior that they have, they've actually received kind of some national attention here as well, and so they've got the redneck fishing derby and some other things like that, which didn't do a whole lot to help the image of the fish. But from a nutritional standpoint, when you start to look at this, and again, there are several people at the Ag Lab are looking at the Asian carp meat and evaluating it from a product standpoint, a nutrient standpoint, as are several other research universities that are looking at this and determining that from a standpoint of a food source and the food quality, that the characteristics from protein, from omega-3s, and to low fat, and all of those beneficial kind of things, the Asian carp have all of those benefits in spades. And if ramped up to a certain productivity level, or even at the lower level that they are now, it can still be a competitor with beef and poultry and pork, and actually have better food content for you than those other meats. And so that's something that is kind of taking place now, that we've kind of got the harvesting issues and mechanics somewhat worked out. Now is the challenge of changing perceptions and expanding the market, because there's some people that don't need to be convinced of the value of the Asian carp, and that is the 2 or 3 billion Chinese. But unfortunately, they're on the other side of the world, but the Asian population in Peoria and then Chicago are such that they are, now that the word is out on this product, that they are asking for it. And so between the low cost and the high nutrient value, of these fish. One of the other markets is because we have food insecurities all over the country, and particularly here in the Peoria area. And if we can provide, and Roy on his own, with his own kind of initiative, has made some inroads with the food banks in the areas, and so that line of production is going to be benefiting people that need it the most of this high protein food source, and low fat and all the other good characteristics. And so there are some discussions that are going on, that have gone on, with not only regional but also with national food banks, and establishing those as a market niche for this. So it's a matter of, and again, changing the perception, but changing the perception is hard to do on a broad basis. But you've got to it's got to happen incrementally, and whether it's through the food banks or whether it's a presentation and sampling by Rotarians at the Rotary Club of Peoria, which I hosted. We had a meeting, and then a chef that was very adept and is working with Asian carp, he actually prepared it, and we had sliders that these Rotarians ate, and to a person, they were very surprised, and they really enjoyed it. And so it's things like that, whether it's 50 or 100 people or 25 people at a time, that we get it out into the public, and they get to taste it and just see how great it is. Again, one of the positive characteristics of it is that if you keep it in good condition, and that's kind of a key. If you keep it in good condition and the fishermen ice it down, and they're motivated to keep it in good condition, because Roy pays them more for fish that's in good condition than not. And so from the moment they net it and bring it into the boat, it's iced down and then brought into Roy's facility, iced down again. And so the meat, if you will, is kept in a very good condition. Well, one of the things about it that is positive is the fact that if you keep it in very good condition through the supply chain, that the end product is in it, and it ends up being minced because of the bones in it, and to be more acceptable kind of to the American palate and working with it. So it comes in a minced state, and it has no fish smell, no fish taste. So basically, it takes on the flavor of anything you mix in with it, and so it is a very flexible product from that standpoint. And again, hopefully that flexibility will increase the interest in this as a food source. But I've had it. And you put taco seasoning in it, tastes like a fish taco. You put soy or teriyaki, it tastes like teriyaki. So it is very, very flexible to work with, and tastes great. And so I think it's just a matter of getting it out there, and this we look at this not dissimilar to the challenges that the toothfish or whatever it was that they were catching down in Chile, when they renamed it the Chilean sea bass, and it ends up on every great restaurant menu. But it had this other kind of. So we're trying to get away from the reference to Asian carp and talking about whitefish or some other name that is coming out of a marketing and branding process. Well, one of the speaking of Asian carp specifically, there is more resource, if you will, than one business like Source Enterprise can handle. So we're looking at between the fishing and the processing and all the activities associated with this. We're actually, and Roy and I have talked about this, we're actually establishing a an industry cluster here in the Peoria area, because the opportunity is there. So we're looking at several other operations, like the Source Freshwater Company is what his company is called, and then adding fishermen, so we can add several other fishermen teams, up to maybe 40 or so fishing in just the Peoria pool, and then several other businesses. So we can, the number that he had given me, by the time you take everything into consideration, transportation, all that, is probably 300 or so people, 350, depending on how it kind of maxes out. But that's significant, and as I say, we can set that up here in Peoria in a way that like no other in the country of harvesting this fish. So that's one of the benefits, and the beneficial use of dredge material, same way. Just need to get that product stream, if you will, established, and working with people at the local and regional and state levels to help us find those markets. They're doing it in Minnesota. There's a company called Minnesota Mulch, and they're working with Minnesota Department of Transportation, who specifies a certain quality and engineered characteristics of the soil that they use on their products. Or their projects. And so there's a built-in kind of regenerating capacity of a need for this kind of a product, and we hope that we can establish the same kind of things here. And we had a regional regional workshop here last September, and we got 90 people or so that showed up from all over the upper Midwest. And when we took them around and showed them what we had in the way of physical assets, the people involved and all that, they were saying, you guys have it here. You've got all the cards to play. Now we just need to kind of refine it and bring it together. It was actually on the beneficial use of dredge material. So we had people all along the supply chain, from the researchers to people doing dredging, to the end user, the Rosenbaum, to people at IDOT. Well, from a business standpoint, from a personal standpoint, obviously, it's seeing my grandkids and playing with the grandkids and those kind of family activities. But from a business standpoint, and kind of professionally, it's just I get motivated just by talking to the people that we have in the region. I mean, it's just such great folks, and I'm kind of an outgoing person by nature. But I'm always, and I've been working in a previous career in architectural engineering business and practice here in Peoria. I established a lot of contacts and relationships around the community, and so I've been able to transfer many of those over. But I'm meeting, new people all the time, and as I say, the fun for me is to get introduced to a new person that has a shared common interest that we have here, and I just see, and I've been around Peoria long enough to know that sometimes we are our own worst enemies sometimes here in Peoria, and we don't look at the opportunities that might exist to not only do something good, but do something great. And the fact that we have these opportunities and these assets, and that people are recognizing that, maybe not the general public, but that's part of our responsibility too, is get the message out to let people know, what is happening here and the national implications of that. that we're not just playing around here on our own sandbox, that people around the country are looking at what's happening in Peoria and saying, boy, you know, these guys have their act together, they're really doing well, and to elevate, to do that, to help elevate our and improve our self-perception of kind of what is going on here. So.